Hello everyone, welcome to Chetan Bharat Learning and welcome to our series Answer Writing and Test Series for UPSC Mains 2021. In this series, what we are gonna do is that we are going to discuss some of the questions related to your UPSC main syllabus. Those of the students who have already cleared UPSC, who are like very sure that they are gonna clear the UPSC Prelims 2021, they are supposed to follow this series. There is this complete series in which we'll be covering all the modules GS 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll break the GS papers into small sections, and then we'll be discussing questions related to various sections. I'll be covering with you the environment and disaster management portion of GS paper 3. We are starting with GS paper 3. I guess you would have already seen the class by Raghav sir in which he has discussed some of the questions related to Indian economy portion of GS paper 3. I'll be covering environment and disaster management portion of GS paper 3, and so on so forth. We'll move on to the other GS papers, GS2, GS1, GS4, and we'll be covering the entire syllabus of UPSC mains, the general studies portion of UPSC mains. Plus there will be a weekly essay class as well, so you can follow that as well for your essay practice. So like I said, I'll be covering environment and disaster management portion. First of all, let's have see what UPSC has actually mentioned in its official syllabus as far as GS3 is concerned. Conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, environmental impact assessment. And the second thing it has mentioned is disaster and disaster management. So the 6 classes that we have allotted to this particular section will also be divided as per this thing only. We'll be covering the pollution aspect, we'll be covering the climate change aspect, we'll be covering ecology and biodiversity conservation aspect. Then we'll be moving to disaster management and the disaster, the actual disaster profile, the areas which are vulnerable to various disasters and such like things. So the questions that we'll be covering today, they'll be dealing with the pollution part of your environment syllabus. So without wasting much time, let's move on to our first question. What are microplastics? Discuss the concerns posed by it. Suggest a plan of action to overcome the threats posed by the microplastics. The most important thing that you should keep in mind as far as your answer writing is concerned is that you have to address each and every part of the question. You have to address each and every part of the questions. Invariably, it is seen that the question that is asked by UPSC, it has multiple parts. For example, let's take this example only. What are microplastics? That's one thing that's asked in the question. Discuss the concerns posed by microplastics. That's the second thing that's asked in the question. And then the third thing is suggest a plan of action to overcome the threats posed by microplastics. So we are supposed to suggest some way forward also. How can we address this problem? So there are three parts of the question, and we must make sure that we address each and every part of the question in our answer. What students generally do is they focus on one part of the question and devote majority of the space in their answer sheet to that part of the question only. The other parts are like in many cases they are inadequately addressed, or sometimes they are not even touched. So UPSC does not award such type of behavior. The marks you'll get in return for such answers would be proportionately less. So make sure that you address each and every part of the question. Whenever you see a question in the question paper, the first thing you should mentally calculate is what are the different parts and how I'm going to address each and every part of the question. Now this thing you have to do for each and every question that you encounter in your question paper. The second most important thing is time management. How much time you devote to each and every question, and whether you are able to complete the paper or not. So that's the macro aspect of the answer writing, the management of time during the exam. And this is the micro aspect of answer writing, that you are addressing each and every aspect of the question that is asked. So let's come back to our question. What are microplastics? So you're supposed to give a basic definition of microplastics. You can of course, I'll not be giving you a word by word answer of this question. We'll be discussing what you're supposed to write in this answer. Of course, you can manipulate the words, you can use this or that sentence according to your convenience. So you can frame a basic definition like microplastics are shreds of plastic with length less than 5 mm. So that would be a basic definition of microplastics. Over the period of time, we have seen increasing use of microplastics, particularly in the cosmetic industry. You might have noticed these scrubs that are becoming so popular these days. Like not these days, like over the period of last 1 or 2 decades. So these cosmetic products, they invariably use some microbeads. So there are two basically sources of generation of microplastics. One is natural, one is the actual manufacture of very small shreds of plastic that we call as microbeads. But that's not the only way in which microplastics are generated. So that's just one way in which microplastics are generated, the manufacturing of microbeads that are used in cosmetic industry and such like things. The other way in which microplastics are generated are through breakdown of normal plastic. Breakdown of normal plastic. Now, contrary to the popular perception, this is not the major cause of microplastic pollution. Breakdown of normal plastic is the major contributor. Almost 90% of the microplastic pollution is caused because of this reason, breakdown of normal plastic. We dispose of plastic in an unscientific manner. That plastic goes to landfills or gets accumulated in the rivers, and then that gets dumped in the oceans of the world. That plastic gets broken down into smaller fragments, resulting in production of microplastics. So this is the major cause of microplastic pollution. So in your answer, you are supposed to highlight both these points. Now, moving on to the second part of the question, discuss the concerns posed by microplastics. So what do you think are the concerns posed by microplastics? First is that they escape plastic. We know that's non-biodegradable by its very nature. So they keep on accumulating. They escape the treatment process. They escape the filtration process. For example, the microplastics in the sewage. We use microbead products, and those microbeads, they gets discharged into the sewage, and sewage goes to the sewage treatment plants. But the sewage treatment plants, they are not able to filter or treat those microbeads. So they go into the river sources, natural water sources, into which the treated sewage water is discharged. So from there, like most probably they'll go into the rivers, and from the rivers they end up into oceans. So the first concern is the very pollution that they cause, that they escape the filtration or treatment process. Filtration and treatment process. And hence they get accumulated into river water, natural water sources, wherever the treated water is discharged. And then the second causative factor for the microplastic pollution. In general, the plastic that we use, the normal plastic that gets broken down into microplastic, and the normal plastic gets accumulated in the landfills. There it gets broken down into microplastics, and the harmful chemicals, they get leached into the soil, and from soil they may be taken up by plants, or again they can those toxic chemicals, they can get mixed in the groundwater and hence pollute the other water sources as well. So that's the second thing. Possibility of leaching from the landfills. Then the third concern, when these microplastics, like either they get they get accumulated in the groundwater, from the groundwater the seep off may lead to the rivers, and river water gets discharged into the oceans. In the oceans, these microplastics have been one of the most important factors that have resulted in dead zones. There are large zones of ocean water in which so many marine organisms are found dead. They are exposed to toxic chemicals, and microplastic pollution is one of the key factors contributing to that. So third would be dead zones in the oceans. Next, the possibility of the potential of bioaccumulation as well as biomagnification. They may have got discharged into leached into the groundwater. They may have got discharged into rivers. They may have ultimately reached the oceans. But how do they affect biodiversity? How do they affect the flora and fauna in these ecosystems? They have the potential, the microplastics and the chemicals in the constituting the microplastics, the synthetic chemicals, they have the potential for bioaccumulation. They get absorbed in the food chains, and and what is biomagnification? This is the increase in concentration of a pollutant as it moves to the higher trophic level. So at every higher trophic level would have increased concentration of pollutant, and ultimately this results in loss of biodiversity. We have seen the instances of dead whales, dead sea turtles, and such marine life. And when we have analyzed the dead body of these marine organisms, we have found increased concentrations of microplastics. So bioaccumulation and biomagnification is yet another concern. So in this way you can mention so many concerns that are associated with the use of microplastics. Now coming on to the third part of the question, suggest a plan of action to overcome the threats posed by microplastics. Now we are supposed to give some suggestions. We are supposed to offer some way forward. So what can you come up with? Mind it, your plan of action has to be multidimensional. Two of the dimensions are very easy to identify because there are two causative factors responsible for microplastic pollution in the first place. Your plan of action should address both those causative factors. The use of microbeads in the cosmetic industry, for example, and the second is the normal plastic waste generation and disposal of plastic waste. As far as the use of microbeads in the cosmetic industry is concerned, there can be ban or a stringent regulation of use of microbeads in the cosmetic industries. Ban or stringent regulation on use of microbeads in the cosmetic industry. What can you do? What can you suggest in the case of normal plastic? As far as now, normal plastic can also be classified into various categories. As far as single-use plastic is concerned, again, ban or stringent regulation of single-use plastic. The plastic that we use as carry bags, and that's of very little thickness. It usually ends up clogging our drains and going into the sewage and contributing to the microplastic pollution. So stringent regulation or ban on single-use plastic. But the way things are today, we cannot altogether get away with plastic. So we need to develop alternatives to plastic. we should encourage eco-friendly alternatives to plastics. For example, cloth, jute bags, paper bags, and such like things. And that's not all. We also need to evolve other alternatives that would involve financial support and financial support as well as policy support from the government. So these two can be further suggestions in this regard. Now, like I said earlier, we are going to, in any case, we are going to continue with the use of plastic for a certain while. So we need to properly segregate our waste. We need to properly segregate our waste. Now the plastic waste has to be kept separate. If it is kept separate, then there will be less chances of its unscientific disposal. There will be lesser chances of its unscientific disposal. What happens is that let's say there is this biodegradable waste, and we have we might have decided that we are gonna convert this biodegradable waste into compost. For that, like, compost pits were dug and the entire waste was dumped into those compost pits. But let's say the waste was not properly segregated. What would happen? Those plastic bags that were like otherwise present in like dump of biodegradable waste, that would result in leaching. That would contribute to leaching of the harmful chemicals into groundwater or the soil. So that would destroy the entire purpose of let's say composting. So what we have to do, what we must ensure is, again in the plan of action, that proper segregation of waste is done. Moreover, you can add one more point over here. There is no significant international efforts that are going on to reduce plastic production in the world. We have carbon emission targets. We want to reduce the carbon dioxide production, carbon dioxide emission on account of industrial activities and other such activities. But there is no such international agreement as of today, in which the different countries of the world, they might have agreed to some measurable reduction in plastic production across the world. So that can also be included in one of the points. So in this way, you can address all the three aspects that are being asked in the question. The detailed hints regarding what can be included and what all points can be included, you can find it in the model hints that will be providing you with this class. So I think we should wrap this discussion over here and move on to the next question. What are green crackers? Do you think the shifting to green crackers will address the issue of excessive air pollution during the festival season? So, green crackers. Yeah, I would classify this question as easy or moderately easy question. What are green crackers? You are supposed to give a definition of the green crackers, and then this is the important part. Do you think shifting to green crackers will address the issue of excessive air pollution during the festival season? So if you have to frame an answer to this question, first of all, provide a basic definition. These are the eco-friendly crackers or low polluting crackers which have sound and air emissions level, the pollutant emissions level within the permissible limits. Low decibel or emission levels. Such crackers are known as green crackers. Usually what happens is that these green crackers, while they burst, their chemical composition is such that they release water molecules which absorb dust particles or the particulate matter particles, PM 2.5 particles. They are absorbed by the water molecules. So they help in reducing the emissions, as they have reduced emission levels as compared to the normal crackers. These came into limelight during 2018 period, when Supreme Court had mandated the use of only green crackers because of the excessive pollution during the festival season in Delhi, the Delhi smoke issue. So provide a basic definition of the green crackers. Now, do you think shifting to green crackers will address the issue of excessive air pollution? Here you have to in order to address this part of the question, you first of all need to mention that how in any case these green crackers would solve the problem of would contribute to solving the problem of air pollution, because they have lower emission levels. Now here you need to provide some data. They have 30 to 35% less sulfur emissions, nitrogen oxide emissions, as well as particulate matter emissions, PM 2.5 emissions. They produce water molecules which absorb dust, hence the emission levels get reduced. They have the lower decibel limits also, lower sound limits as well, so they help in reducing the noise pollution as well. They do not use, these green crackers, they do not use harmful chemicals like barium nitrate, which coloring agent and which produces toxic smoke. So in this way they help in reduced emissions. But the question was not that how green crackers help in reducing the emissions. The question was, do you think shifting to green crackers will address the issue of excessive air pollution during the festival season? Now, is cracker bursting the only reason responsible for excessive air pollution during the festival season? Now, like, let's be clear, we are not talking of air pollution in general. We are specifically talking about excessive air pollution during the festival season. Is bursting of crackers the only reason responsible for excessive air pollution during the festival season, or there might be some other factors also? Definitely there are other factors. The burning of stubble in the agrarian states, the surrounding agrarian states of Punjab, Haryana, UP. That's one factor. We are working for that as well. Then excessive construction dust, that also contributes to the Delhi smog. If we talk about the excessive air pollution in the Delhi region. So there are multiple factors that are responsible for excessive air pollution during the festival season, bursting of crackers being one of them. No doubt shifting to green crackers will reduce the contribution of crackers in causing the air pollution, but solving this problem in totality requires multi-dimensional efforts. So we need to simultaneously work on reducing the instances of stubble burning by appropriately incentivizing farmer, and as well as giving proper alternatives to the farmers, so that this practice is properly checked. Similarly, the construction activities, already like Delhi government had introduced this graded response plan, in which when the pollution level hits a certain level, some of the activities were regulated or completely stopped. Construction activities were stopped, thermal plants were shut down. So those things, the efforts to check the air pollution, they have to be multi-dimensional, and only if we'll work on all the dimensions would this problem be appropriately addressed. So on this positive note, you can end your answer. Now moving on to the next question. Examine the root causes of India's problem of e-waste and discuss the factors responsible for ineffectiveness of rules and regulations made in this regard. So question like what all are the different aspects that are touched in the question. We have to examine the root causes of India's problem of e-waste. Root causes and discuss करने हैं, and then the factors responsible for ineffectiveness of rules and regulations. The question assumes that there are certain rules and regulations that are in place, but there has been the effectiveness of those rules and regulations is in question. So we are supposed to discuss the factors responsible for this ineffectiveness. So these are the two parts of the question, and we'll try to address both the parts of the question in our answer. As for the first part of the question, like you can begin this question with an introduction giving the definition of the e-waste. The discarded electronic or electrical devices and equipments without the intent to use constitute e-waste. India is the 5th largest producer of e-waste globally. India is the 5th largest producer of e-waste globally. Around 4% of the global e-waste is generated in India. Now, these are some of the ways in which you can start your answer. You can write an introduction to this question. Now, moving on to the main aspect that was asked in the question, we have to discuss the root causes. You can classify the root causes into 2 categories. Now, you have to discuss about the problem of e-waste, not just e-waste management, why the problem of e-waste exists in the first place in case of India. E-waste generation and poor management of e-waste. The generation of e-waste in first place and its poor management in the second case. So in these 2 divisions you can divide the root causes. How come e-waste generation? How would you elaborate this point? You see, India has a vast and growing IT industry. Can IT industry grow and survive and thrive without the use of electronic devices? If we want our software industry to grow, if we want our IT industry to grow, definitely that would involve the excessive use of electronic gadgets, mobiles, laptops, computers, and other forms of hardware. So because we have thriving IT industry, that essentially means that we have excessive demand for a growing demand for computers, mobile phones, and other forms of hardware, which ultimately contribute to the e-waste. Second, not only we have a thriving IT industry, we are also increasing our solar contribution of solar energy into in our energy matrix. And solar energy, like one of the key contributors to solar energy is the photovoltaic solar panels. Photovoltaic solar panels, they also constitute e-waste. They also have a certain lifespan, and after that they would contribute to the e-waste only. So it has been estimated that around by 2030 India would be producing 2 lakh metric tons of e-waste through solar panels, photovoltaic e-waste by 2030. That has a potential to grow to 1.8 million tons by 2050. So that's the second factor that is contributed to huge amount of e-waste generation. The third would be, we have the second largest population in the world and we have a growing economy. So that essentially means that the demand for the luxury goods is increasing, and moreover the mobile phones and the other electronic gadgets, they are increasingly becoming a necessity also. So more and more people, they are buying such products and there is increasing demand for these products. So that's leading to excessive e-waste generation. So these 3 points, with these 3 points you can highlight how excessive amount of e-waste is being generated in India, and the trend is expected to grow in the coming years. It's not going to come down anytime soon. The second part of the problem, the second root cause I would say, is the poor management of e-waste. So whatever e-waste is generated, it is not properly managed, it is not properly disposed of. So how can you elaborate on this point? Almost 95%, more than 90% of the e-waste that is disposed or managed in India, it's done in the informal sector, and which produces problems like inability to regulate those small scale units. So in dominance of informal sector is one reason. Most common technique that is being used in the informal sector to dispose of the waste is either landfills or incineration plants. Landfills leads to leaching of the heavy metals to the ground, to either to groundwater or to soil, where it is such heavy metals get bioaccumulated. The incineration of such material, such waste, it results in production of hazardous or poisonous fumes, which contributes to air pollution. So informal sector, the reliance on the landfill method and the incineration method to dispose of the e-waste in the informal sector. Then you might have read about the e-waste management rules 2016. In those rules, a wonderful concept was introduced: extended producer responsibility. Extended producer responsibility, where producers were supposed to, like, on a very on the very conceptual plane, the producers, it was assumed that because producers have the knowledge, they have the proper networking also in the networks by which their products get sold in the market, so they would have the proper distribution network, so they'll be able to maintain a database that who all are the end users of their products, and then maintaining that database, they were given the additional responsibility that you are also supposed to collect back those products at the end of their life cycle, and you are supposed to properly, scientifically dispose of those e-waste, electronic waste, but that's not being properly done. So that would also like come into this category: poor management of e-waste in India. So that addresses the first part. There are like other points also that you can see in your model hints. So that addresses the first part of your question: examine the root causes of the problem of the e-waste. So you can divide this into two parts. Now coming on to the second aspect of the question, discuss the factors responsible for ineffectiveness of rules and regulations. Just now I mentioned about e-waste management rules 2016, in which the concept of extended producer responsibility was introduced. Have we been able to actually have this concept rolled out in full? No. The Central Pollution Control Board as well as the State Pollution Control Board, they were supposed to have random checks. There is no system. There was no systematic checking of this system, whether this system, extended producer responsibility, was actually implemented. So there was supposed to be random checks, and there is no record of those checks, or like what has been done, what action has been taken, nothing of that sort. That's one reason why the rules and regulations have been ineffective. The second would be, first is like random checks and absence of record. Second would be the very let's say, keeping in mind the geography of our country, the such vast, geographically vast country that India is, the inadequacy of collection centers. Inadequacy of collection centers. Under the same e-waste management rules 2016, the producers, they were supposed to set up collection centers to collect back the devices, from the end users after the end of their life cycle. From where they would collect? They were supposed to set up collection centers. First of all, like, there are other issues also involved with collection center. High cost involved with, additional cost involved with setting up collection centers. And then they, like, even if they try to set up the collection centers, they are in any case going to be inadequate given the vast geography of India. That's the third concern associated with the implementation of e-waste management rules. Moreover, like, there is one additional point. There is no buyer awareness also. Whenever you go to let's say an electronic shop to buy an iPhone and a laptop or any other mobile phone, like I just said iPhone, awareness in buyers. Are you told of any such thing as like collection at the end of the life cycle, the responsibility of the producer to recycle the product that you are buying? No, you are not communicated anything of that sort. So that particular sales executive, they are not communicating those things to the buyers, and buyers in general, they are not aware of such things. So things keep on moving as they were earlier, and there is no the wheel is actually not moving. So that's the reason for ineffectiveness of rules and regulations. Rules and regulations are there. E-Waste Management Rules 2016, they are there, but they are not effective in checking the improper generation of e-waste, improper management of e-waste. So in this way, you can handle this question. Now moving on to the next question. Discuss the role of mangrove forests in maintaining the ecological balance, highlighting various threats. Discuss the need for scientific management of the mangroves. Now you can start this answer with the basic definition of mangroves, that mangroves are resilient, salt tolerant plants or trees, also called halophytes, that grow in high salinity anaerobic coastal conditions, tidal regimes. High salinity, like in the coastal regions, these trees, they can tolerate high salinity. They don't even need fresh water. Then they can tolerate anaerobic conditions. When the high tide is there and water intrudes onto the coastal regions, these trees even grow in completely waterlogged conditions. So they have special adaptations called stilt roots or prop roots or nematophores, which help them survive in those regimes, in those conditions. Now the question was, the first part of the question was, discuss their role in maintaining ecological balance. So this was a basic question, like you can enumerate a number of points to support this part of your answer. How do they help in maintain ecological balance? They constitute an ecotone between terrestrial and marine ecosystems, and an ecotone region invariably favors more biodiversity. So that's one way. Second, how do they help in maintaining ecological balance? They help in, let's say, preventing soil erosion. Then because of the dense nature of trees in the mangrove forests, they provide shelter zones for flora and fauna. They provide shelter zones for safe nesting sites for numerous variety of fish and other aquatic fauna. Then there are also the Sundarbans, one of the largest mangrove sites in the world. Sundarbans, they are also the home of the Royal Bengal tiger, so they support their own flora and fauna in that region. Then what other ways they help in maintain ecological balance? Whenever there is let's say cyclone or a storm surge, they provide a riparian buffer. They act as a line of defense So they help in reducing the impact of a cyclone or a storm surge. So these are the ways, plus other also. These are the ways in which they help in maintaining the ecological balance. Now the second part of the question was highlighting various threats, discuss the need for scientific management of the mangrove forests. If you look at it closely, this part itself is composed of two parts. We also have to highlight the threats to mangroves, and we also have to discuss the need for the scientific management of the mangrove forests. So what are the threats to mangroves? You can classify the threats to mangrove forests into two categories: natural and anthropogenic, human. Anthropogenic. Natural, we just now discussed that they act as a buffer. But whenever a cyclone strikes the shore, it is the mangrove forests that take the brunt. If they exist on the coastal regions, it is the mangrove forests that take the brunt. If there is a storm surge, if there is a tsunami or such like disaster, it is the mangrove forests that take the first brunt. So goes without saying that they are affected by such natural disasters. But this is the point that you need to highlight, how the human activities are destroying the mangrove forests. What are the threats emanating from human activities to the mangrove forests? That these forests are being cleared for developmental works. They are being cleared for housing projects. They are being cleared for developing farmlands. They are being cleared for creating salt pans or aquaculture or so many human activities. Housing projects, aquaculture farms, salt pans. In the Gujarat region, we have seen the destruction of so many mangroves because of this reason. For farming on the west coast of India, lot many mangrove forests, they are destroyed and the land has been converted into farmlands. So because of these activities, the mangrove forests are getting destroyed. Shrimp farming, it's leading to destruction of the mangrove forest, because on those regions only where the mangrove forest exists, we convert those regions into shrimp farms, aquaculture, salt pans, farmlands, and invariably there are also housing projects also in some cases, notwithstanding the coastal regulation zone regulation, CRZ regulations. So these are the threats to mangrove forests. Now the last part of the question was discuss the need for the scientific management of the mangrove forests. How can we scientifically manage the mangrove forests? Now that was the tricky part of the question. What all things what all things come to your mind when you think of the scientific management of the mangrove forests? First of all, we need to have a database. We need to have a database of all the species of flora and fauna that are found in a particular coastal region, so that an atlas of flora and fauna and a database of flora and fauna, it can be actively studied so that conservation efforts can be appropriately directed. Some of the mangrove species which are on the verge of extinction, they should be specifically preserved using the biotechnology initiatives. There is a Sonorita acida variety of the mangrove trees which are under the threat of extinction, so they should be appropriately preserved using the biodiversity biotechnology techniques. Then a gene bank can be maintained to preserve those varieties. Those varieties, they should be included in IUCN Red List. The forest department officials, they should be properly trained in taxonomy and other characteristics of the mangrove forests, mangrove trees. So that's another thing that can be done to scientifically manage the mangrove forest. Then we can also co-opt techniques like GIS system, geographical information systems, to properly track the development or degradation of, as well as degradation of the mangrove forests. So these are some of the ways in which the mangrove forest can be scientifically managed. So in this way you can frame an answer to this question. You can read, for the further reading you can refer to the model hints that we are providing with this lecture. The last question for the day: beyond the health costs, air pollution can also hurt economy in other ways. Elucidate in the backdrop of alarming air pollution in the country. Usually when we think of air pollution and its impact on us, we think of the health cost, that we may get sick because of the pollutants that are present in the air. But the question says that beyond the health costs, air pollution can also hurt the economy in other ways. It's not just the cost of curing the sick that we would bear because of the air pollution. There are other costs also that are associated with air pollution. We are supposed to highlight those costs. We are supposed to elucidate, simply means throw light on. We are supposed to throw light on what other ways air pollution can hurt our economy. Now you can start this answer with a statement or with the statistics that according to WHO, 14 out of top 20 most polluted countries in the world are from India. According to WHO, 14 out of top 20 most polluted countries in the world, they are from India. Now, with this statistic, you can introduce, you can write a brief introduction and then move on to the main demand of the question. What other ways beyond the health costs? Beyond the health costs, in what other ways air pollution can hurt the economy? So one of the ways in which air pollution hurt the economy is through, let's say, welfare costs. According to UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, approximately 220 billion was the welfare cost that India bore on account of air pollution, on account of illness due to air pollution. When somebody is sick, you are supposed to pay him, like invariably, like depending on your employment conditions, you are given some sickness allowance, you are given a paid leave or some medical leave or something of that order. So the loss, we are supposed to discuss the impact on economy. The loss, according to United Nations Environment Program, it's of the order of 220 billion, which is one of the largest among the countries of South and Southeast Asia. And then you have the labor cost. So when you're not working, somebody else might be doing your work. So similar amount of, almost similar amount is the labor cost of leaves on account of let's say air pollution. The Greenpeace International, according to the study by Greenpeace, approximately $225 billion is the labor cost on account of leaves due to sickness on account of air pollution. Then the third is the impact on productivity. If there is excessive pollution and it's showing impact on our health, it's showing impact on our body, leave aside the direct health cost. That also has an impact on the employee productivity. The let's say the work that you can produce in a unit time. So because of the health issues associated with air pollution, you are actually doing less amount of work per unit time. So that affects your productivity, that affects economy, like on a macro level. The fourth way could be impact on the agricultural yields. Impact on the agricultural yields. There was again this study which said that because of the air pollution, there was a 19% reduction on the there was impact of around 19% on the wheat yield because of the air pollution. So this is yet another way in which our economy gets impacted on account of air pollution. So these are the 4 ways that are coming in my mind, and you can suggest others as well, in which air pollution is hurting our economy. So with this, the first session comes to a close, and I hope the session was useful to you people. You might have got some insights into how you can write a good answer to the question. Of course, many other points can be added as far as the basic information is concerned. You can, no doubt, you can have many more points as compared to the ones that are discussed in the session. But the overall objective of this class is to give you an insight into the requirements of the UPSC, the things that are rewarded in UPSC, the kind of behavior, the kind of answer writing that is rewarded by UPSC. So if you could incorporate these ideas into your answer writing style, so like we hope that probably it would contribute to a marginal increase, or to whatever extent it would help to increase your marks. So with this, I'll wrap up this session. I'll see you tomorrow with the second session on environment and disaster management. As far as this session is concerned, so I'll take your leave and thank you from my side.